Ladies and gentlemen, too often we measure time by our own expectations, thinking that if something hasn't happened yet, it never will. But I want to show you today, delay is not denial. There is a divine schedule, and every event in your life is set according to that schedule. God's timing aligns with His purpose. Everything that happens in life is connected to a divine purpose. When we rush into things, we often miss the reason behind them. Just like a farmer does not harvest before the crop is ready, God does not release His blessings until the time is right. Think about it. If Joseph had been freed from prison too soon, he would not have been positioned to rule Egypt. If David had taken the throne too early, he would not have been the leader Israel needed. God's plan is not just about giving you what you want. It's about placing you where you need to be. Preparation before manifestation. One of the greatest mistakes we make is thinking that because we desire something, we are ready for it. But desire is not the same as preparation. God does not promote based on our wishes. He promotes based on our readiness. You may be praying for a great opportunity, a business breakthrough, or a relationship, but God sees what you cannot see. He is more interested in preparing you than just blessing you. Because if you receive something too soon, you may lose it due to lack of wisdom, character, or maturity. Delays are not denials. Many of us give up when things don't happen in our expected time frame. But listen carefully. A delay is often God's way of protecting us from premature exposure. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading Israel. Why? Because leadership is not about a title. It is about preparation. Even Jesus waited until the appointed time to begin His ministry. If the Son of God Himself had to wait, how much more do we? Do not confuse waiting with rejection. When God delays, it is because He is working behind the scenes, arranging things for your good. Trust in the process, not just the promise. Faith is not just about believing in the outcome. It is about trusting the process. Many people hold onto the promise but struggle with the waiting period. But let me tell you, faith that only works when things are fast is not true faith. If you trust God, then you must trust His timing. When a baby is born too soon, it faces complications. When fruit is picked too early, it is bitter. The same principle applies to our lives. God's perfect timing ensures that when your blessing comes, you are able to sustain it. My friends, God does not operate on human schedules. What seems late to us is right on time for Him. What seems like a delay is actually a divine setup. He knows when you are ready. He knows when the situation is ready. And He knows when the impact will be greatest. So today I encourage you, wait on the Lord. Trust His process. Embrace the preparation. And know that when the appointed time comes, nothing can stop the manifestation of His will in your life. God's timing is not just perfect. It is purposeful. And when you understand that, you will never be anxious again. Time is one of the greatest mysteries of life. From the moment we are born, we are placed on a timeline that governs our existence. We measure time in years, months, days, and even seconds. However, while humans operate on a schedule of deadlines and expectations, God operates according to divine purpose. His timing is never dictated by human urgency, but by His ultimate plan. Everything in life unfolds not when we want it to, but when it serves the highest purpose for which we were created. God does not make mistakes. He is a God of order, precision, and intentionality. The Bible reminds us in Ecclesiastes 3:01 that to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. This means that nothing happens randomly or by chance. Every event in our lives, whether joyful or painful, fits into a divine pattern that we may not always see or understand at the moment. The issue is not whether God is working, but whether we are patient enough to recognize His perfect alignment of events. One of the greatest dangers we face in life is rushing into things simply because we feel the urgency of the moment. Many times, we want things to happen quickly because we equate speed with success. But in God's kingdom, speed is not the measure of progress. Purpose is. A person may move fast in life, but still be outside of God's will. Another may appear to be delayed, yet they are in perfect alignment with divine purpose. Consider the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son, but instead of waiting for His timing, they tried to force the promise into reality by having Ishmael through Hagar. What followed was years of trouble and tension. This teaches us that when we step ahead of God's timing, we may create unnecessary struggles for ourselves. Think of the way nature operates. A farmer does not plant a seed today and expect a full harvest tomorrow. There is a process. First, the seed must go into the ground. Then it must be nurtured, watered, and given time to grow. If the farmer becomes impatient and tries to rush the process by pulling the seed out of the soil before it matures, the entire harvest will be lost. This is how God's timing works. There are things He has planted in your life that need time to grow. If you try to force them prematurely, you may ruin what He is preparing. In history, we see countless examples of how God's timing works in alignment with His purpose. Take Joseph, for example. He had a dream that he would one day be a ruler, but instead of stepping into his destiny immediately, he went through years of hardship. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. From a human perspective, it seemed as if everything was going wrong. But from God's perspective, everything was aligning. Each trial prepared him for the moment when he would be elevated to a position of authority in Egypt. Had Joseph become a leader too soon, he might not have been ready for the responsibility. But when the time was right, he stepped into his purpose fully equipped for the task. God's timing is often different from what we expect because He sees the end from the beginning. He knows when we are ready, when the people around us are ready, and when circumstances are perfectly positioned for the greatest impact. We may think we are ready for certain blessings, but God, in His wisdom, knows what we cannot see. Many times, He withholds things not because He wants to deny us, but because He wants to protect us. What we perceive as a delay is actually a divine setup for something greater. The greatest struggle for many people is trusting in God's timing when life does not seem to make sense. Waiting can be difficult, especially when we see others moving ahead. But we must understand that comparison is one of the greatest enemies of faith. Just because someone else's breakthrough came sooner does not mean they are ahead of us. Each of us has a unique path and purpose, and our timelines are not the same. Instead of looking at others, we must focus on God's plan for our own lives. God's alignment is also seen in the life of Jesus Christ. The Bible tells us that He came to earth at the appointed time. Not a day too early, not a day too late. Even though people expected a Messiah for centuries, God waited until the perfect moment in history to reveal His Son. If Jesus Himself had to wait for the right time to begin His ministry, how much more do we need to trust that God's timing in our lives is perfect? It is crucial to understand that divine timing is not passive waiting. It is active preparation. While waiting on God, we must continue to grow, develop our character, refine our skills, and strengthen our faith. The period of waiting is not wasted time. It is training time. David was anointed as king long before he sat on the throne, but during that waiting period, he was being prepared through trials, battles, and leadership experiences. When we fully grasp the reality that God's timing is inseparable from His purpose, we will no longer see delays as obstacles but as opportunities. Every moment of waiting is a moment of refining. Every closed door is a redirection. Every apparent setback is a setup for something greater. The key is to surrender our own timeline and trust in the one who created time itself. God is not just interested in getting us to the destination. He is interested in shaping us for the purpose that awaits us there. His timing ensures that we are not just given a blessing, but that we are prepared to handle it wisely. When we align ourselves with His purpose, we will realize that His timing is not just perfect. One of the most important principles in life is that preparation always comes before manifestation. Nothing great happens instantly. Every great achievement, every fulfilled promise, and every divine blessing requires a season of preparation before it is revealed. However, many people struggle with this concept because they want immediate results. We live in a world that values speed, instant success, instant gratification, and quick rewards. But in God's kingdom, things do not happen just because we desire them. They happen when we are ready for them. God does not promote based on emotions. He promotes based on preparation. Many people pray for opportunities, breakthroughs, and success. But the real question is, are you prepared for what you are asking for? God is not only concerned about giving us blessings, He is concerned about our ability to handle them. A blessing that comes before its time can become a burden. A person who receives success without character will eventually lose it. This is why God takes us through seasons of preparation before He allows us to step into what He has for us. When we look at nature, we see that every living thing goes through a process before it matures. A baby is not born in one day. There's a 9-month period of development in the womb. A seed does not become a tree overnight. It must go through a process of germination, growth, and maturation. The same principle applies to our spiritual journey. Before God elevates us, He prepares us. Before He gives us a position, He develops our character. Before He releases His blessings, He ensures that we are mature enough to handle them. A classic example of this principle is seen in the life of David. When the prophet Samuel anointed him as king, David did not immediately take the throne. Instead, he returned to the field to tend sheep. He spent years in the wilderness, facing challenges, battles, and betrayals. Why? Because he was in a season of preparation. God was training him in leadership, patience, and faithfulness before allowing him to rule a nation. If David had been placed on the throne immediately, he would not have had the wisdom or strength to handle the responsibility of kingship. The preparation was necessary for the manifestation of his destiny. The same pattern can be seen in the life of Joseph. He had a dream of greatness as a young man, but before that dream became a reality, he had to endure years of trials. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. To the natural eye, it seemed like Joseph's life was moving in the wrong direction. But in reality, God was preparing him. Through his time in slavery and prison, he learned skills in leadership, administration, and problems. By the time he was promoted to be the ruler of Egypt, he was fully equipped to handle the position. If Joseph had been placed in that role earlier, he would not have had the maturity or experience to lead effectively. Many people ask, why is God making me wait? The truth is, God is not delaying, He is developing. The waiting period is the training ground. Just as an athlete cannot compete without training and a student cannot graduate without studying, we cannot receive God's best without preparation. This is why some prayers seem unanswered. God is not saying no, He is saying not yet. There is still work to be done within us before we can handle what He has in store. This principle also applies to relationships, careers, and ministries. Many people want to be in a great relationship, but they have not yet developed emotional maturity. Some want to start a business, but they have not yet acquired the discipline to manage resources. Others desire a position of leadership, but they have not yet learned to serve. God, in His wisdom, will not allow us to step into something before we are ready because He loves us too much to let us fail prematurely. Jesus Himself went through a season of preparation before beginning His ministry. Though He was the Son of God, He did not immediately step into His calling. He spent 30 years in obscurity before his public ministry began. Even after his baptism, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness for 40 days, where he fasted and overcame temptation. If Jesus needed preparation, how much more do we? Preparation is not always comfortable. It often involves testing, trials, and challenges. But every difficulty we face in our season of preparation is meant to refine us. Just as gold is purified by fire, our faith and character are strengthened through trials. God allows us to go through seasons of waiting, learning, and growing, so that when the time comes, we will not just receive the blessing, we will be able to sustain it. It is important to understand that the time of preparation is not wasted time. Many people become frustrated when things do not happen as quickly as they expect, but they fail to see that God is working behind the scenes. The lessons you learn in your season of waiting will be the foundation for your future success. The skills you develop, the discipline you cultivate, and the patience you build during preparation will sustain you when your breakthrough finally comes. We must embrace preparation with the right attitude. Instead of complaining about the wait, we should focus on growing in wisdom, character, and faith. Instead of questioning God's timing, we should ask, Lord, what are you teaching me in this season? When we adopt this mindset, we will begin to see that every challenge, every delay, and every trial is part of a greater plan. The truth is, preparation is a sign that manifestation is on the way. God does not prepare us for nothing. If you are in a season of training, it means something great is coming. Do not despise the process. The greater the calling, the greater the preparation. The more valuable the blessing, the more refining is required. When you understand this, you will no longer resist preparation, you will embrace it. Everything God does is intentional. If He is making you wait, it is because He is making you ready. Trust the process, because when the preparation is complete, the manifestation will come, and it will be greater than you imagined. One of the most challenging things to accept in life is waiting. We live in a fast-paced world where everything is expected to happen instantly. People want quick success, immediate results, and instant gratification. However, in God's kingdom, timing is not dictated by human urgency, but by divine wisdom. When things do not happen when we expect them to, we often assume that God has said no. But the truth is, a delay does not mean a denial. It often means preparation, protection, or positioning for something greater. Many times, we interpret delays as rejection. We pray for a breakthrough, a new opportunity, a financial increase, or a relationship, but when it does not happen within our expected time frame, we start to feel discouraged. We ask, why is God not answering my prayers? Why is He taking so long? However, we must understand that God's timing is different from ours. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." What seems like a delay to us is often God working behind the scenes, setting things in order for the perfect time. In the Bible, we see many examples of how delays were actually divine setups for something greater. Take the story of Lazarus. When Jesus was told that his friend was sick, He did not rush to heal him. Instead, He delayed for 4 days. To those watching, it seemed like Jesus had arrived too late. But what they did not realize was that Jesus was not just planning to heal Lazarus. He was planning to resurrect him. What seemed like a delay was actually a greater manifestation of God's power. If Jesus had healed Lazarus immediately, the people would have witnessed a healing. But because of the delay, they witnessed a resurrection. Similarly, in the life of Abraham and Sarah, God promised them a son, but they had to wait for years before the promise was fulfilled. In their impatience, they tried to take matters into their own hands by having Ishmael through Hagar. But that was not God's perfect plan. Isaac was born at the appointed time, proving that God's delays are not denials. They are preparations for something better. Had Isaac come earlier, it would not have been the miraculous fulfillment of God's promise. Delays also serve as a process of refining and strengthening our faith. Many times, God allows us to wait because He is building something inside us. Waiting teaches patience, dependence on God, and spiritual maturity. If everything happened immediately, we would never learn to trust Him fully. Some blessings require spiritual endurance before they can be received. Consider the life of Joseph. As a young man, he had dreams of leadership and greatness, but instead of stepping into his destiny immediately, he was sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years it seemed as though nothing was working in his favor, but in reality, God was using those years to prepare him for the position he was destined to hold. Had Joseph been promoted too soon, he would not have had the wisdom and maturity needed to govern Egypt. The delay was not a denial. It was a preparation for something greater than he could have imagined. Another reason God allows delays is for our protection. Many times we pray for things without realizing that they could harm us if given too soon. Imagine a child asking for a car at the age of 10. The parent does not say no because they do not love the child, but because they know that giving them a car too early could be dangerous. In the same way, God sometimes withholds certain blessings because we are not yet ready to handle them. If He were to give us certain things prematurely, they could lead to destruction instead of blessing. Delays also position us in the right place at the right time. Sometimes we think we are ready for a certain opportunity, but God knows that the timing is not right. If we move ahead of God's schedule, we may miss the full impact of His purpose. A delay may mean that God is orchestrating events, moving the right people into place, and setting things up for a greater blessing than we anticipated. What we see as stagnation is often divine alignment. It is important to remember that our perspective of time is limited, but God sees the full picture. We tend to focus on the present moment, while God sees the end from the beginning. What we call waiting is actually God working out details that we cannot yet see. This is why we must trust Him, even when things seem slow. Instead of becoming frustrated during delays, we should ask, Lord, what are you teaching me in this season? What are you preparing me for? When we shift our mindset from frustration to faith, we will begin to see that every delay has a divine purpose. And history is full of examples of people who had to wait before stepping into their destiny. Moses waited 40 years in the wilderness before leading Israel. David was anointed king, but had to wait years before taking the throne. Even Jesus did not begin His ministry until the appointed time. If the greatest figures in history had to go through seasons of delay, then we must also understand that God's process always involves timing. Many people miss their blessings because they give up during the waiting period. They assume that a delay means God has forgotten them, so they stop praying, stop believing, and even settle for less than what God has for them. But faith requires endurance. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." The key phrase here is at the proper time. There is always a proper time for manifestation. And it is our responsibility to remain faithful until that time comes. Delays are not easy, but they are necessary. They develop patience, build character, and position us for greater things. God does not delay without a reason. If something has not happened yet, it does not mean it will never happen. It simply means that the appointed time has not yet arrived. Instead of seeing delays as disappointments, we should see them as divine setups. When God finally moves, everything will come together in ways that exceed our expectations. One of the greatest challenges in life is learning to trust a process that we do not fully understand. We live in a world that values control, where people like to plan every detail of their lives. However, God's ways are often beyond human understanding, and His process is rarely revealed all at once. Trusting His process means surrendering our own timelines, desires, and expectations to His greater wisdom. It means believing that even when things do not make sense, God is still working everything out for our good. Trust is not always easy. It requires faith, patience, and a deep understanding that God's plans are always better than our own. Many times, when people do not see immediate results, they begin to doubt. They wonder if they made the right decision or if they misheard God's voice. But true trust is demonstrated not when things are clear, but when things seem uncertain. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This scripture teaches us that trust means letting go of our limited understanding and allowing God to direct our path in His perfect way.